Okay, this is Film Class Week 7, Part 1. This is The Wizard of Oz. Um, the movies that I show, my students often make fun of me because I'll often be like, oh, this is my favorite movie today, or this is my favorite movie today. Because it turns out, like, my students joke about me having like a dozen favorite movies. I constantly mention movies are my favorite. Because they are. The movies that you're seeing the movies that you're seeing in this film class are my favorite movies of all time. Um, the, the the Wizard of Oz is maybe not my very favorite movie. I think of all the movies that I teach, it's the one that I'm kind of the least excited about, maybe. I like it. I really like The Wizard of Oz, but I don't know. I teach it for a couple of reasons. And so I guess this may be a shorter, we'll see if this turns out to be a shorter lecture series than the other ones because I have less to say about The Wizard of Oz. Um, but we'll see. Um, though I teach The Wizard of Oz for a couple of reasons. Number one, it's one of David Lynch's favorite movies, and each unit of this class builds to a David Lynch film. And so it's important, I think, to look at movies like this because it's where he's getting a lot of his images and ideas and structure from. The other reason I play it, and I play it also because it's an important movie in film history. It's one of those just like everybody's gotta watch The Wizard of Oz. It's like a famous movie. It's famously kind of one of the earliest uses of color in film in this kind of big dramatic way. And they really emphasize it. It's not just a movie that's in color. It's a movie that makes a big deal out of the technology. Like there's like wow, it's like a big moment. You see the same thing in like the Avatar, James Cameron's Avatar is like, there were 3D movies before that, but James Cameron was like a whole other level of 3D. So, it's a technologically important movie. The music is beautiful. Judy Garland is a superstar. Everybody should know who she is. And, so it's an important film in film history. I maybe have slightly less to say about it. But it's a pretty vital film. And the other reason I play it is kind of ridiculous, and it really matters a lot less for an online film class than for an in-person film class. But most of the films I like to watch are like pretty disturbing. There's a chipmunk really having fun over there. There's a couple of chipmunks are chasing each other. Okay. Most of the films, I play a lot of films that are very disturbing. Like the happiest film that I play is like Rear Window, and even that, as we discussed, is a kind of psychosexual nightmare if you're paying attention to it. You see something similar. Like Blue Velvet has a happy ending, but like it leaves you feeling overall kind of disturbed. And then a bunch of the movies that we watch have these kinds of massively tragic endings. I mean, 2001 doesn't make any sense, but like a lot of these films are like dark. Night of the Hunter has a happy ending, but like exposes a lot of darkness along the way. The Shining has a happy ending, but there's a lot of darkness along the way. But like some of the other movies we're looking at, I'm realizing now in the middle of describing this to you that most of Double Indemnity has a real downer ending, and is disturbing all along the way. And some of the upcoming movies also are huge fucking downers. It's a lot of death and destruction coming. As I teach Shakespeare for a living. That's the other thing. I teach film. My two great loves, or well, three, is Shakespeare and David Lynch and the X-Men. And so I spend a lot of time in Plato and Kafka, and I have some people that I like. So the point is that I spend a lot of time looking at very tragic, serious things. And so I think it's important to have The Wizard of Oz here, like, it's in the middle. This is like the middle film in film class. I think it's an important thing to have as the middle film in film class because, holy God, you guys need a little break with something happy and more fun than you usually get. So that is why I am teaching The Wizard of Oz to you. All right, so Wizard of Oz intro. So go watch The Wizard of Oz if you didn't already see it, and then come back here and we'll do the lectures on The Wizard of Oz. All right. I'm going to keep going. I don't know. You just pause and come back. Okay, so let's get started. The first thing is that most people, when they describe or remember the movie The Wizard of Oz, tend to remember it as that movie that starts out in black and white and then becomes color. That's not quite right. We got to pay more attention on that. That's not quite right. The opening of the movie isn't in black and white. It's in a kind of what's called sepia tone, which is like a kind of light yellowish brown. It seems like that not big a deal, but it's. I mean, I think when you look at it next to Double Indemnity, it doesn't look the same. It's important to notice this because I think it's worth talking about. Just for starters, the world of color doesn't come out of nowhere. The beginning of the movie does have a color, sepia tone. But it's also what the primary sepia tone has a very particular history. And by the way, which exists, by the way, is like an Instagram filter. Like I'm sure there's a sepia tone Instagram filters makes your photographs look old timey. It's because photographs used to be done on paper, special paper with chemicals. I don't fucking know how they work. What am I? I don't know. But they used to, do shit. You've seen old movies where they put the photographs in the water. Anyway, chemicals, not water, but they put it in the thing and they hang them up to dry and the photograph develops. I don't know. The point is that that sepia tone, it's what happens to photographs as they get older and start to degrade. They kind of discolor a bit. And so it's an important thing because in the world, the movie, this is something students get easily confused about, right? When you watch Double Indemnity, it's made in the 1940s and it takes place in the 1940s. So you've got, right? But with Wizard of Oz, it's made in 1939, but I think it takes place earlier than that. I think Dorothy is like, it's like, and again, the differences probably don't leap out at you, but like she's on a farm and it's this kind of hard farm scrabble life. And it seems like it's like 1910. And again, I'm going to the books for some of these things. Although I haven't really read the Wizard of Oz books. It's about 100 hours to read them all. It's about the size of Harry Potter. I'm going to do it someday. But the crucial thing is that it takes place in an earlier time. And so one of the first things I want to point out about the sepia tone is that it suggests it suggests something that the audience of 1939 would recognize as the past, the old-timey days of 1900 on the farm. So I think it's a because again, why? Because photographs that are sepia toned have gone old. So then what you're looking at is like old. It's a neat thing. This is an important thing to think about. It's not just like, it's not as, a lot of students want to do, it's not as simple as films were in black and white because it was all they had. And then films became color because it was all they had. Because it was an option and they took it. You always want to think about why does the film have the color scheme that it does? Why does it look the way that it does? For example, the Matrix movies are all green and black. Oh Brother, Where Art Thou, by the way, takes a very brown and yellow tone that makes it look a lot like The Wizard of Oz. Why? It takes place in the same time period. It's that like in the same relative place. It's like dusty. So and old timey. So the thing I want to point out though is that when Double Indemnity is in black and white, it's basically the technology of the time causes it to be in black and white, although we discussed a lot the dramatic things they do with lighting. But if a modern day movie is in black and white, it's like a dramatic choice. It suggests seriousness. It suggests what it wants to be compared to, what it wants to be in the same group as. So when you have a movie like Sin City or Roma, which are modern day movies that could be in color, but people choose to put them in black and white, which is a very unusual choice. So when they do this, it's a way of saying, judge my movie in the context of these other movies. It tells you the kind of team that they want you to think of it as. So the important thing about the sepia tone at the beginning of the film is that it's its own thing. There aren't other sepia toned movies. It's an interesting choice because they have the option of color. So that means they have the option of slightly colorizing the first act of the movie by putting in this kind of brownish thing. I think it's important to recognize that and all the other things students want to know is they like codes. Like students often like things like, in a dream, if you find treasure, it symbolizes this, as if the symbols are the same across all centuries and all individuals and all places. So it's also not that black and white means something and color means something, but you have to look at the time and place to think about it. So if a movie today is in black and white, it is begging you to compare it to other black and white movies. Whereas if a movie is in color, that's not super interesting. That's standard. Wizard of Oz being in color is super interesting because it was one of the first movies that did that, and so it has a kind of blow-you-away quality. I've already spent way too much time talking about this, but, you guys know me by now. You know I like to go on and on. Okay. All right. Let's see, what do I want to talk about? Okay. I'm going to pick it up in the next video. I'll see you in the next one.